Hello, I'm Steve Williams. This is number 0830 of the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and once again, this is another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0830. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, this week it's all about the books. First up, we have a return visit from Edward Willett, the author of the YA mystery novel Fireboy.
The tagline in the opening line is, I knew things were getting weird when my best friend's face appeared in the campfire, but I didn't realize how weird until the campfire followed me home. My main character, Samantha, is about to start grade 8, but it's going to be weird because her entire grade 7 science class disappeared on a field trip that she wasn't able to go on because she had food poisoning. So her best friend was among those, Lorenzo, and she's just been camping with her father, and Lorenzo's face showed up in the campfire, and then Lorenzo shows up outside her house, made entirely out of flame.
The 2025 Aurora Awards are coming up, part of the Canadian Science Fiction and Fantasy Association. We touch base with Clifford Samuels, the Aurora Awards administrator. Canadian authors for decades have received worldwide acclaim.
Publishers in the mid to late 80s and early 90s were really keen on Canadian authors and promoted them. Those authors are still doing really well today. People like Julie Cherneda and Robert J. Sawyer and Dave Duncan, they have gotten their start years ago, and the publishing industry has gotten their name out to the members. And people are reading them. There are some great, amazing Canadian authors.
Stuart Nulman is in with another edition of Book Banter.
Hi, I'm Stuart Nulman, and Book Banter takes a look at the relationship of John Lennon and Paul McCartney through the songs that influenced them and the songs they wrote. So let's get by with a little bit of help from these friends later on the Stuff File program.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, dad joke theater, morning shower thoughts, and of course, an idiot of the day. The guest later, the person who told you this was show number 0830, was Steve Williams. He's a leadership coach and the author of Notorious, Leadership Lessons from History's Most Notorious Leaders. And he was a guest back on show number 0820. You can go back and check that. Thank you very much, Steve, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0830. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. A West Virginia couple was arrested after being found naked and engaging in sexual activity in a stolen RV during a traffic stop. 35-year-old Shannon Bryant was behind the wheel with 48-year-old Matthew McDonnell in the passenger seat. According to Officer R.L. Ham, a passerby yelled out that the occupants had switched seats before I made contact with them. When questioned, Bryant admitted to the lewd act while the vehicle was in motion. A search of the RV uncovered drug paraphernalia and a white powdery substance. The vehicle had been reported stolen from a nearby city. Bryant and McDonnell were arrested for indecent exposure, drug possession, DUI, and possession of a stolen vehicle. Both defendants with extensive criminal records have pleaded not guilty and remain in jail. Wow. Having sex in a moving RV. That takes determination and balance. Why would they try this? Perhaps they misunderstood the Winnebago RV Company's ad about the virtues of RVing.
Both our business and personal goals are driving us to explore the reaches of our potential. At Winnebago Specialty Vehicles, we help our customers expand their reach.
Well, I guess it's all in how you think it. The pilot of a small plane was preparing to land at Sugar Valley Airport in Mocksville, North Carolina. According to the National Transportation Safety Board's preliminary report, the control tower warned the pilot of a turtle on the runway. The plane touched down, but then the right wheel lifted to avoid the turtle. The communications operator heard the plane throttle up. Another witness saw the wings rock and the wheel lift, and the plane then crashed about 250 feet from the runway. The pilot and the passenger were both killed. An official cause has not been given for the crash, and the NTSB says a final report could take another year or two to complete. Well, the turtle should be off the runway by then. A 10-month-old cave-aged Cabrales cheese from Spain's Angel Diaz Herrero Cheese Factory set a Guinness World Record by selling at auction for $42,232. The Regulatory Council DOP Cabrales in Asturias, Spain, facilitated the sale to a restaurant. Guinness World Records recognized this dairy product as the priciest cheese ever auctioned. The cheese gained attention after winning the title of Best Cheese of the competition from the Regulatory Council DOP Cabrales. Weighing 5 pounds, this costly cheese was produced using cow's milk and matured for 10 months in the Los Mesos cave, located nearly 5,000 feet above sea level. Amazing. $42,232 for cheese. That's a steep price. Careful, someone might put a tariff on it.
Tariffs for dairy products, 250%. Nobody ever talks about that. And they've treated our farmers badly. Look, our country's been ripped off by everybody. That stops now.
And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our first guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, and still with food, a slice of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip's 1947 wedding cake sold for nearly $3,700 at auction and will be eaten by a devoted royal enthusiast. The fruitcake, stored for decades by the family of Chief Petty Officer F. Lowness, was sold by Riemann Danzy auctioneers in Essex.
But is it still as heavy? Yes, it is. Yes, it weighs a ton. It's very solid, isn't it?
Despite its age, the cake garnered significant interest, highlighting the enduring appeal of British royal memorabilia. The winning bidder, Jerry Layton, plans to consume a portion of the cake at a banquet on the Royal Yacht Britannia for his 65th birthday after flambeing it with rum for safety precautions. Well, let's see if he gets past his 65th birthday. Layton also owns a piece of Charles and Diana's wedding cake. Gee, I wonder why Her Majesty the Queen never polished her cake off.
My goodness, I've been busy.
And let's get to our first guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Award-winning author Edward Willett is back on the program, this time with his newly released YA mystery novel entitled Fireboy. He joins us via Zoom from Regina, Saskatchewan. Hi, Edward.
Hi, Peter. How are you?
Just tickety-boo. Nice to have you back on the program with us. Now, I know this book has a pair of protagonists who are two 13-year-old girls, but who is Fireboy?
Well, the tagline in the opening line is, I knew things were getting weird when my best friend's face appeared in the campfire, but I didn't realize how weird until the campfire followed me home. So the setup is that my main character, Samantha, is about to start grade 8, but it's going to be weird because her entire grade 7 science class disappeared on a field trip that she wasn't able to go on because she had food poisoning. So her best friend was among those, Lorenzo, and she's just been camping with her father, and Lorenzo's face showed up in the campfire, and then Lorenzo shows up outside her house made entirely out of flame, and that sets up the mystery and the fantasy and everything else.
Okay, so I'm going to just delve deep into your psyche. I'm curious to know how this came to your mind, and perhaps what were you on at the time?
It's really hard to say that because the book I started a long time ago, and it was actually out at a publisher for about 2 years, and they kept dithering. And in the time it took them to decide whether or not they wanted it, I had built my own publishing company pretty substantially. So that's why I brought it out myself through Shadowpaw Press, my publishing company that I own. But yeah, as far as I can remember, it was just the image of a face appearing in the fire. And with a lot of my stories, I start with an image or a little idea like that. And then it's just a matter of asking myself questions, why is there a face in the fire? And who's seeing this face in the fire? And what does it mean? And from that, I build a story.
Now, it's interesting because you say you published this yourself. You had written this a while ago. There is a series of rejections that people go through, especially when they're writers. And sometimes they put things on a shelf somewhere. You did not do that. So obviously you have a belief in this story, even though the publishers that you had dealt with in the past did not. What was it that made you force your way through and say, no, this needs to get out?
I never have doubt in my own stories, actually. It's always the publisher's fault if they don't want them. I just really loved the character. I loved writing the story. I loved the voice of the girl, Sam, and her friend, Meg. And it has a lot of my sense of humor and a lot of the kind of thing that I always like to read as a young reader, which actually drives a lot of my writing for young readers is, well, this is the kind of book I would have loved. So I'm pretty sure somebody out there is going to love it as well. So yeah, that was it. And it wasn't that it was rejected. It was just that the publisher that had it said they were considering it. And I would say, well, when are you going to tell me? And they'd say, oh, well, we can't say, you're on a waiting list. And as I said, in the meantime, Shadowpaw Press has become, it's probably the third largest publisher in Saskatchewan. And I'm publishing all sorts of people. I've published Governor General's Award winners and people like that. And so I can put out a certain number of my own books. And I decided this was the one that I would put out this year.
As someone who is a YA writer, how difficult or how easy is it to get into the mind of, say, a 13-year-old? And is this the mind of you as a 13-year-old, or do you have an into how to get into a 13-year-old's mind, especially in today's world? Because let's be honest, a 13-year-old is a lot different from when we were 13.
Yeah, that's also a tough question to answer. I started writing very young. I wrote 3 novels in high school, and I'd started writing short stories and stuff before that. So I've often said that I grew up and my characters didn't, although that's not true because I do write adult fiction as well. But so there's certainly me is in there and, my memories of being young. But also I've read a lot of young people's literature over the years, and I have a daughter. She's not 13 anymore, but she's 24. So, I was around young people not that long ago on a regular basis. And ultimately, though, I think it just comes down to imagination and being able to put yourself into the head of somebody that you're not. And that's what writing is all about. I haven't heard from a 13-year-old girl yet as to what they think of Samantha, but there have been some very nice reviews of it from people who used to be 13-year-old girls, women. So that's all I can say. All I can do is write what feels right and hope that people enjoy it.
You mentioned that women have read it, and I was just about to ask, has your daughter read it?
It's very difficult to get my daughter to read my books. She's the only ones I think she's read are ones that I read out loud to her. My Shards of Excalibur YA series I read out loud to her, so she's heard those. She's a huge reader, but she doesn't tend to gravitate toward my books. And I don't know for sure in her case, but years ago, when my first YA novel came out called Soulworm, my niece at the time was in her teens, and she said she didn't want to read it because she didn't want to know what went on in her uncle's head.
Oh, I've got a lot of nieces and nephews, and yeah, ditto. Ditto.
I think she's afraid she might not like it, and she wouldn't know how to tell me. I think that probably falls into the when kids don't want to read their parents' books.
Gotcha. Now, I don't want to give anything away. I don't want you to give anything away because I want people to read this book. But you say there are 2 girls in this particular story, and one sees the fire boy. Do both see the fire boy?
Oh, yes, they do.
Okay.
The other girl is very important because what happened to the grade 7 class was they went on this field trip up a mountain for some astronomy up on top of the mountain. And they found the bus on its side with the teacher was there with a bump on his head, didn't remember anything. And then in the back, this one girl had not disappeared with everybody else. And she was also unconscious, but she was kind of buried in all their camping equipment and stuff at the back. And it's that girl that my main character, Sam, then reaches out to try to figure out what's going on, because she was on that trip and maybe there's something there that they can, working together, they can figure out what's going on. So that's where the second character comes in, and she does have some insight into what happened, but she wouldn't tell anybody because she didn't think they'd believe it. And so between the two of them, they're able to figure out what's going on with the fire boy and with all of the other kids that disappeared. And without giving too much away, let's just say that ultimately they rescue the kids from magical enslavement. There we go.
Well, you mentioned Pearl didn't want to say anything because no one would believe her. Now that they have these two girls, do any of the adults believe them, or do adults think we need to get these girls some therapy?
The only adults who find out what's going on or believe it are the ones who are involved in this kind of magical conspiracy thing that's going on. So the main adults, like Sam's dad and their teachers and stuff like that, nope, they never really quite grasp what's going on, which is kind of a classic thing in YA. I really call this middle grade young YA fiction because of the age of the characters. It's kind of a classic thing, adults tend to be clueless in these books.
Okay, we just have a few more minutes, and I've got to get to something that you kind of humble bragged earlier. Talk about your publishing company and the success that it's had.
Well, Shadowpaw Press started in 2018 because I had two books I wanted to put out. One was a collection of my own short fiction, and one was my grandfather-in-law's First World War memoirs. And at the time, I was just going to self-publish them, but I talked to a local publisher who said, no, you should start a publishing company. And I did, and it started very slow. I was kind of focused at first just on my own stuff that had come back to me because other publishers had gone under and the rights had reverted. But then I picked up a couple of new titles. I started publishing an anthology series called Shapers of Worlds, which is authors that I had interviewed on my own podcast, The World Shapers. And that's gone up through 5 books now, that anthology series. And it just grew from there. And was it last year? Last year, I think, I put out 20 books, which is ridiculous for one man and a cat, because that's all there is to Shadowpaw Press. It's named after the cat, and he's literally a figurehead. He's no help. And yeah, so that was my big year. I'm definitely pulling back. This year, I'm not down to 10 coming out this year. And next year is probably going to be more like 4 or 5. So I've got to scale back if I'm going to keep it going. But yeah, and I've published poetry and literary fiction by some major literary writers. And I published a YA fantasy by Arthur Slade, Governor General's Award winner. And I've done a lot of reprints as well of books that had come out previously and I thought deserved a second chance. So it's been quite a wild ride.
Were you surprised by the success of your brand?
I don't know. It all just kind of happened and grew, and there it was, and all of a sudden I was doing all this. And also, how do you measure success? Am I making money? Not to speak of, but I'm getting books out there that deserve to be out there. So I don't know. It's just, I had been in publishing my whole life. Obviously, I was a newspaper editor and reporter, and then I was working as a communications officer. And all that time I was writing and nonfiction. So I've got more than 60 books I published under my name of various things, or under one of my pseudonyms. And so publishing is something I've always been around. And it was a big learning curve, and I maybe haven't climbed it entirely yet. And the fact that I'm a one-man operation certainly doesn't help when it comes to getting things done. But somehow I've done it, and the people who are published that I published seem to be pleased with it. So it just kind of grew.
And very quickly, we talked about this the last time you were on the show, but you just mentioned it a few moments ago. Tell us a little bit about your podcast.
The podcast is called The World Shapers. For the first 5 years, I only interviewed science fiction and fantasy authors, and that's where there are 5 anthologies of authors that I interviewed. They're science fiction and fantasy anthologies. Last year, I expanded it to other genres, mainly because of Shadowpaw Press and wanting to be able to interview people that I was publishing who were not science fiction and fantasy authors. And for a while, it was weekly, but I couldn't keep that up with everything else. Now it's a bit more erratic, but I've had a few episodes this year. I just had one out, last weekend, I guess. And I have a couple more I'm lining up. So I continue to interview. It's gone from being a focus on the creative process to more a focus on new releases. But I still talk about the creative process quite a bit because I love talking about how other people write and how I write.
So now that you're a publisher yourself, I mean, you started this publishing company because you couldn't get some stuff published. Now that the shoe is on the other foot, do you kind of feel guilty when somebody comes along and says, you got to publish this book, and you say, well, maybe not?
Yeah, I know. I'm very gentle about it. I've never been open to submissions, like general submissions, or hardly at all. Most of the stuff that's coming to me is through people who are aware of Chautauqua Press and authors that I know. And so I haven't had to do a lot of flat out rejection. I've had to reject a few things. And I do feel for the authors, but at the same time, you just can't publish everything. And if I ever did open up widely to submissions, I would be so swamped that I don't know what I would do. I do have an editorial board that helps some with quite some substantial authors on there who help me with looking at submissions and stuff. But yeah, I feel for them, but at the same time, publishing is a business and you have to make decisions.
Well, congratulations on your publishing company. Congratulations on Fireboy, your latest book. And congratulations on The World Shapers, your podcast. And thank you very much once again for being on the program with us.
Oh, thanks for having me on again. I really enjoyed it.
Edward Willett, author of Fireboy. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0830, and you'll find the link to Edward's website, his podcast site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
And now, Dad Joke Theater.
Did you hear about the kidnapping at school? It's fine. He woke up.
Join us again for another Stuff File program, Dad Joke Theater.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like, but the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestufffileprogram. program.
I'm standing proudly for Canada. Hi, this is Arlene Dickinson. I am so proud that Canadians are standing together. We're using our voices, and we're supporting Canadian businesses and Canadian workers for this great country that we all love so much. Look for Canadian labels to help keep food on Canadian tables. Shop as if your country depends on it. Keep your money in Canada, for Canada.
You're listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a show that perfectionists take with them everywhere, from point A to point A+.
And still to come on the program, we'll talk to the administrator of the Aurora Awards, plus Stuart Nulman is in with another edition of Book Banter. We do indeed have a morning shower thought coming your way, and of course an idiot of the day, and much more in Stuff File News right here, right now. Police in Murray, Kentucky responded to a report of an odd crime. The suspect had fled the scene. Officers saw him driving nearby and stopped his car, but 40-year-old Jonathan Mason allegedly refused to roll down his window or exit his vehicle as ordered. Police forced the issue and arrested Mason, charging him with assault, criminal trespassing, resisting arrest, and failure to maintain auto insurance. The crime? Mason allegedly released a live raccoon into a business where it bit someone. Police are well acquainted with Mason. He had already been convicted of trespassing from the same business and had led police on a chase about 6 months previously. His getaway vehicle that time was a mule, and he allegedly resisted arrest that time too. Police were investigating him then for animal cruelty as he allegedly whipped the mule an unnecessary amount of times. I guess it was a rented mule. You know, one of the characters in this story is a stubborn animal, and the other is a mule. An unnamed 80-year-old man told police he was going to work when he made a wrong turn down the Spanish Steps in Rome, Italy. The car got stuck halfway down, and the Italian fire brigade had to use a crane to lift it off the staircase. The historic steps, built in the 18th century and appearing in multiple films, including 1953's Roman Holiday, starring Audrey Hepburn and Gregory Peck, are closed to the public while archaeologists inspect them for damage. Well, at 80, he's a fraction of the age of the steps, but then again, the steps aren't driving. At Cedar Point Amusement Park in Sandusky, Ohio, riders of the newly opened Siren's Curse roller coaster got a break in their experience when the coaster experienced a delay. The stop on June 28th left riders suspended in midair for about 10 minutes. Park spokesman Tony Clark said the coaster's safety system performed as designed, the ride was restarted, and guests continued their ride. Well, perhaps they should take the word curse out of the title, Siren's Curse, although I'm sure that during the 10-minute midair stoppage, many a curse words were heard. Someone called 911 just after midnight to report a man was trapped in prison in Fishkill, New York. Ha ha, right? Except the New York State Police and the Glenham Fire Department responded because the downstate correctional facility was closed in 2022 and someone trapped inside indeed constitutes an emergency. 19-year-old Cody Mallon of Argyle allegedly found a hole in the fence and went inside to get some photos. He managed to get himself locked in a cell. Luckily, he had his phone with him, and he was the one who called for help. Once released, he was cited for misdemeanor criminal trespass, but apparently not booked into jail. That would have been redundant. I also hope that, whether it's an actual camera or just a cell phone, that they erased his ill-gotten pictures. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, in Auburn, Washington, over 300 people donned inflatable dinosaur costumes and competed in the annual T-Rex World Championship races at Emerald Downs Racetrack. The event, which started as a team-building exercise for Tri-Guard Pest Control in 2017, has since gained widespread popularity and is now open to the public. After being suspended in 2020 and 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the races returned in 2022 with Houston resident Andrew Stuart crowned as the top Tyrannosaurus Rex. This year's event also included an aerial component with 3 T-Rex-clad skydivers parachuting onto the field before racing to the finish line. The full T-Rex World Championship races are set to be broadcast on ESPN2 later this summer. You know, if my mother were still alive, she'd be shaking her head and saying, "Where are these people's parents?"
I think that the debate over the parental instincts of the T-Rex is now academic.
Yeah, point well taken. Anyway, let's get to our next guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? The 2025 Aurora Awards will be taking place online on August the 10th. It's part of the Canadian Science Fiction and Fantasy Association, or KISFA as it's known. The nomination process will end on July 19th. Joining us to tell us what these awards are all about is Clifford Samuels, who is the Aurora Awards Administrator. He joins us via Zoom from Calgary. Hi, Clifford.
Hi.
Thanks for being on the program with us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Now, I understand that these awards have been around since 1980, so if I do my math correctly, it's 45 years this year.
There was 1 year that it was skipped. The awards started off in Halifax at HalCon, and at those days, they just did a Lifetime Achievement Award, and that was given to A.E. Van Vogt. And then in 81, it didn't happen. There was no real organization, and things started going in 82, and it's been going on since then.
As I mentioned, the nominations are going to be ending on July 19th, but the awards themselves take place on August the 10th. Who exactly has the opportunity to vote for these awards?
Well, nominations voting are very different, I have to explain, because we've already done all the nomination process. Right now, we are in our voting process. We have our final ballot. Members of the Canadian Science Fiction Fantasy Association, KISFA, get to vote. It's a $10 fee, and they get to go in. We have a voters package, which we get from our authors and their publishers, and members are allowed to download that so they can read all the items, like literally everything that has been nominated. So if you like short stories or novellas or novels, all of those are available for download in e-version, and you get to read them. And then by the late end of day on the 19th, you can have to have your vote in. And we do a ranking voting system, which is kind of different than a lot of people. So you get to pick your first, your second, your third, or your fourth place person. And if that work isn't the first one and it gets knocked off the ballot when we do our calculations, then your second choice comes up. So you get a better chance of getting your voice heard.
Got you. Now, since the inception of the awards, I'm just wondering, how has it grown? And by extension, how has the industry that you're honoring grown over those 40 years?
Well, the Canadian genre industry for science fiction and fantasy, for everything in publishing, has expanded amazingly. There are so many more Canadian authors out there with more places for them to publish, which is fantastic. The awards have evolved over time because originally all it was a lifetime achievement. And over time, we added the best novel category and short fiction categories and art categories. Now we've split out the short fiction category to best novella novelette, which is a long form short work, because that is huge. It never used to be that many authors are getting those things published. And the publishers are really looking for shorter novels. They're not really novels, but they're 100 pages, 150 pages. So this is great. But we keep seeing the numbers of things like short stories. Hundreds and hundreds of short stories are published by just Canadians every year.
How do they do worldwide, by the way?
Very well. Over the years, I mean, there was been fads. Publishers in, the mid to late 80s and early 90s were really keen on Canadian authors and promoted them. Those authors are still doing really well today. People like Julie Cherneda and Robert J. Sawyer and Dave Duncan, they have gotten their start years ago, and the publishing industry has gotten their name out to the members, and people are reading them. There are some great, amazing Canadian authors. People like Guy Gavriel Kay is always an international best-selling author. Cory Doctorow, who doesn't live in Canada, but he's an expat, and he is Canadian, is hugely, hugely popular. So the awards are for all Canadian and our expats, so people who maybe live somewhere else now. They've retired to a sunnier climate, or their work has taken them elsewhere, but they're still writing. So there are a lot of authors out there, and it's fantastic to see. It's a great time to be a Canadian.
Well, I was about to ask that question because, I come from a radio background, and early in my career, I was in a music radio background. And of course, in music radio, we had the CanCon rules that were adopted. And initially, when they were adopted, it seemed to be that, every second song was either Gordon Lightfoot or Anne Murray, because there wasn't a lot of talent out there that we could play. But as time went on, and because of the CanCon rules, other Canadian rock artists and bands came along because the radio stations had to play a certain amount of Canadian music. I would assume that it's not necessarily the same way in the publishing situation, because no one's forcing you to read. So how did the readership or the authorship grow from its humble beginnings for Canadians?
Part of that is the interest. Canadians have a different style of writing than an American author. The endings of our novels aren't as nicely tied up. It varies on what's been happening, though there are a lot now of new Canadian publishing houses that are strictly Canadian. There's Shadowpaw out of Regina through Ed Willett. There's Tyche Press out of Calgary. There's a range of publishing houses out of Toronto and Ottawa. A lot of Canadian magazines that are out there. And the internet has really allowed Canadians to become more visible.
What are the big categories that are going to be announced that are nominated for the events that take place on August the 10th?
Well, one of the big things that we do now, and it started 11 years ago, was the Kisva Hall of Fame. And we induct 3 Canadians. These are members of our society, can put forward these names, their biographies, and we have a jury of 4 Canadians from across Canada who will look at the list of nominees and pick 3 people to be inducted. And each year we've been inducting new people into the Hall of Fame, people who have been recognized for their excellence in the science fiction genre. People like, well, this year we've got Diane Walton, who started On Spec magazine. It's a speculative fiction magazine originally out of Edmonton. And we have Clint Budd, who I would say is one of the people who kept Kisva going and expanded it and created the Hall of Fame. He's now retired from the society. And Charles Saunders, who is a Canadian sword and sorcery, I guess you would call, author. He's passed away, but he was out of the Maritimes and an amazing author. So we like to thank those people for their dedication and what they've done. Some of our past inductees have been out there helping teach, working on conferences, expanding, getting new authors out. People like Robert J. Sawyer, has been inducted in the past, teaches classes on writing to help new writers come out. But the awards themselves, we've got 10 categories. We've got Best Novel, which is your big one. Novella and Novelette, which is longer form short stories than short stories, poetry, graphic novels. We have one called Related Work, which is an unusual one. It's kind of a catch-all, but it mainly deals with anthologies and collections and magazines that have been done in the previous year. And then we have Best Cover Art. And some of the new art that's coming out, we've got some great Canadian artists out there. And we have what we call fan categories. These 2 categories that we have are for things that they don't get paid for it. They do it for the love of it. And we have a fan writing and publication category. And our related work category deals with things like podcasts, convention running, readings, a variety of things like that. So we've got a lot of stuff happening. One of the things we like to do, because if you go to Facebook, it probably still is on Facebook, but on YouTube and look up the Aurora Awards for 2024 and 2023, they're still there and you can watch them. We do fun skits to start off the show and we make it a fun day. And that's one of the things with the awards ceremony is it used to be live in person at a conference. We used to call them CanCon, and they would be hosted at the local conventions, but there's not a lot of local science fiction fantasy conventions anymore. And when COVID hit, we did them online. And we discovered more people are there to watch and more of the nominees are there to give an acceptance speech. And we've continued that because we want more people to participate and to enjoy and to hear the nominees accept their award.
You have been involved with the Aurora Awards through Kisva for many years. Give us a capsule of how you think that organization and the science fiction community within Canada has grown over that period of time. And are you surprised by that growth, or is this what you anticipated?
No, I knew the growth would happen. The more outlets that the authors have to get their works published, because there's new magazines coming out all the time. There's new online magazines coming out that people can get published in. We have seen an explosive amount of short fiction and things like the novellas coming out every year, which is one of the reasons we split our short fiction category into 2, because we just had too much for one category. It was insane. We get hundreds and hundreds, and every year year it expands. I mean, we want more people in the public to know about us so they can read these amazing stories and help participate. And we start everything in the fall with an eligibility list, and we try to get as much Canadian works onto those eligibility lists. I used to do it on my own and it wasn't that big a deal. We have a team of 8 volunteers helping us verify all of the items that get put onto the list. It's a lot of work and one person just can't do it anymore. For me, that explains why we're growing so much. It's just, it takes more than one person to run it. And that's why we created a full society. It used to be run by one fellow. He just couldn't keep up with everything. And Clint Budd created this full society and registered us with the federal government so we could expand across Canada. And we have board members across the country. We're always looking for new people with new experiences to help with us because the workload is growing and we could always use help.
Well, congratulations on the success of KISFA and also the Aurora Awards, and congratulations on the industry of Canadian science fiction writers in general. And thank you very much, Clifford, for being on the program with us.
Well, thank you. Hopefully people will join us online. Everything is on the KISFA website. People can find out more about all of us and enjoy.
Clifford Samuels, the Aurora Award Administrator. Again, the 2025 Aurora Awards will be taking place online on August the 10th. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0830, and you'll find the link to the Canadian Science Fiction and Fantasy Association, where you'll be able to find out all the information about the organization and the upcoming awards. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Giving you something to think about. This is Morning Shower Thoughts.
Maybe urinals were invented when a tall guy walked by the sinks and asked, why not?
Morning Shower Thoughts from the Stuff File program.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestufffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestufffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Hey, how would you like to become a patron of the Stuff File program? It's easy to do. By going to patreon.com and becoming a patron, you help to make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. And if you become a regular patron, as a Patreon reward, I'll share with you an electronic version of my book, Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. You've heard me say on many occasions about the myriad of celebrities I've had the chance to talk to that are contained in my book, which is published by Bear Manor Media. You've also heard me mention that some of the celebrities in my book, and many others, can be heard on our page at patreon.com. If you've been on the fence about joining Patreon, let me try to pull you over to our side. Join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. Sign up at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
From our studios in Montreal, Canada, and going out to the rest of the world, this is the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. It's time to crack a spine. The Stuff File presents Book Banter with Stuart Nulman. Once again, here's Peter Anthony Holder.
And Stuart takes us back to Liverpool. And don't you dare do the accent. As he has a book that deals with at least 2 of the Beatles. Hello, Stu.
Hello, Peter. I promise no Liverpudlian accent this time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'll be good. But you're right. We're going back to the world of the Beatles. And a new book about the Beatles, because just when you thought you have read every book that has been published about the Beatles and know everything about their lives and their enduring impact on the world of rock music in particular and popular music in general, along comes Ian Leslie's fascinating tome about the songwriting duo of Lennon and McCartney called John and Paul, A Love Story in Songs. Now, this is more than just a dual biography of the most successful songwriting partnership of the rock music era. It's a story of how Lennon and McCartney's partnership, both professional and personal, evolved and dissolved by the songs that influenced them, as well as the songs they wrote for the Beatles and their eventual solo careers. So, from Come Go With Me by the Del Vikings, which was the song the original Quarrymen played at a church fete in Woolton in July of 1957 when John and Paul met for the very first time, to Here Today, which was the first song Paul wrote and recorded after learning of John's untimely death in December of 1980. This book gives a new perspective to the history of the Beatles as seen through a selection of significant songs. Now, the narrative is an effective mix of music history, biography, behind-the-scenes stories, and musicology to tell the story of Lennon and McCartney. A special shout-out to how Leslie dealt with the musicology part. Although a complex subject to the layman reader, Leslie manages to bring it to its most reader-friendly version so that someone with no background in music could understand the musical elements that were utilized to make the song in question such standout hits and became permanent parts of the Fab Four songbook. And another strength of the book is Leslie's ability to take the elements of the song's evolutions, like a cooking recipe, that at first try doesn't always work out, but after subsequent attempts at new ingredients that are introduced, becomes a winning recipe. Let me give you one example that really stood out for me. It's the chapter that examines Tomorrow Never Knows, the first track that was recorded for the monumental 1966 album Revolver, but is the album's final track that appears on the record. The first ingredient was Paul's growing interest in recording and collecting a variety of music and sounds, and then splice them up together into a series of innovative-sounding compilation tapes. The second ingredient was John's growing interest in psychology, especially Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, and the hallucinogenic powers of LSD. And while leafing through the book The Psychedelic Experience by Timothy Leary at the Indica bookstore in London, some of the passages in the book inspired him to write the lyrics for Revolver's first recorded track. So those two ingredients, along with George Martin's mastering of recording technology and Ringo's non-stop pulverizing drum beats, Tomorrow Never Knows became a contributing factor to the success of Revolver as a song that, according to Leslie, and I quote, would end on its beginning. Unquote. And usually when I used to listen to Revolver, I would stop at Thought You Get Into My Life and then, not listen to Tomorrow Never Knows. But I got a better appreciation of the song after reading that passage. But John and Paul, A Love Story in Songs, offers Beatles fans a different yet interesting angle on the story of the group through the one thing that they knew best, writing and recording songs and how to bring it up to a new level no one ever knew before. So thanks to their musical genius, John Lennon and Paul McCartney became one of the most influential songwriting teams in the history of modern music and are in the same league as such contemporaries like Rodgers and Hammerstein, Lerner and Lowe, Lieber and Stoller, and Holland, Dozier, and Holland.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. And they're in a league by themselves.
It's also interesting that currently, right now, the prodigy of three of the Beatles are working together in music. Three sons. The only one missing.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, the only person not in that particular group is any of the children of George Harrison.
Well, Danny he does perform occasionally,
right.
But I know that Zach Starkey, Julian, and Sean Lennon, and Paul's son James, they're songwriters. They're successful songwriters in their own right.
But most importantly, they're working together, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, well, you put it this way, they don't have the issues, if you know what I mean.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, there you go.
I'd be curious to be a fly on the wall to find out what the two living dads feel about that. Although, I would assume they're very positive because they are going on tour this year.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah.
Paul and Ringo... put it this way, if they ever come to Montreal, I'll be first in line to get a ticket.
Interesting. Anyway, this week's book is...
John and Paul, A Love Story in Songs by Ian Leslie. It's published by Celadon Books, and it's $40.
And I usually ask what other books in this genre you can recommend, but when it comes to the Beatles, you could probably recommend an entire library.
Well, I could, but I won't because we don't have that much time to do so. But I do have some suggestions. First, you gotta, if you're gonna, read about the stories behind the songs, read Paul McCartney's book, The Lyrics. You could have the choice of either the deluxe 2-volume version in its own slipcase, which I have, or the easy to handle paperback edition, which I also have. Great. It's like the closest thing we'll get to a Paul McCartney memoir. And also, there was a book that was published about 10, 15 years ago called All the Songs, and it tells the stories behind every single Beatles song, the history behind it, everything you need to know. It's such a well-researched coffee table book, and it spawned a whole series of books in that same vein, dealing with such artists as the Rolling Stones, Queen, Fleetwood Mac, Elton John, Bruce Springsteen. It's really something, I'll tell you that. And what I like, and also Bob Dylan, it just comes on. But also this series, the All the Song series, branched out into all the movies. And what they've done so far is delved into the movies of Steven Spielberg and Alfred Hitchcock. And just as fascinating to look through. I just love that series. It's just, if you're a rock music fan and you want a great collection of books to have about this history of these great artists and all of their songs, you got to get the All the Songs series.
And there's also a certain book from a journalist who traveled with the Beatles when they first toured in the United States.
Oh, yes. We're talking about, I know what you mean. It's that Mr. Davis.
Yeah, Ivor Davis. Yep.
That's right. I mean, his book about him following the Beatles on their 1964 American tour. He was embedded with the group. And that was a fascinating book. And he also his book about Charles Manson as well. He's written true crime also. He wrote the first book about the Manson case before 5 years before Vincent Bugliosi wrote Helter Skelter.
Yeah, we've had him on the show several times dealing with several of his books, including another true crime novel, or story rather, that deals with a neighbor of his who murdered his wife. But that's another topic.
My friend.
Yeah. That's another topic for another day. We've gotten way off track. This week's book is...
It's called John and Paul, A Love Story and Songs by Ian Leslie, published by Celadon Books, and it's $40.
Excellent. And how can we find you, Mr. Nulman, sir?
I wish you would find me either in Liverpool, underground at the Cavern Club, or maybe crossing that famous crosswalk along Abbey Road, but you'll have to find me at my blog, stuartnulmansgrapevine.wordpress.com, or at the website, beststory.ca.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Stu.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was no hard day's night for me, I'll tell you that.
Stuart Nulman with another edition of Book Banter here on the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
The Stuff File.
And we're just about a racetrack on this edition of the Stuff File program. We do indeed have an Idiot of the Day coming your way, but I got a couple more Stuff File news stories right here, right now. A bear in Colorado inadvertently locked himself inside a parked car, leading to significant damage to the vehicle's interior. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office shared body camera footage showing a deputy arriving at the scene in the foothills. The deputy safely opened the car door using a rope, allowing the bear to escape. Prior to its release, the bear had wreaked havoc inside the car, leaving a trail of destruction. The Sheriff's Department issued a cautionary message on Facebook advising residents to keep their vehicles locked and refrain from leaving snacks inside, as bears have a keen sense of smell and may be tempted to enter vehicles in search for food. Hey, wait a minute. If the police advisory is don't leave snacks inside your car because bears have a keen sense of smell, then if you're just carrying your tasty treats around, doesn't that make you a giant snack? Yeah. Relatives of approximately 160 individuals had entrusted their loved ones' ashes for a space journey, only to face disappointment. The Mission Possible Nix capsule, part of a space mission by the exploration company, was launched aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket on June 23rd. Despite a successful re-entry into the atmosphere the following day, the capsule experienced a crash landing in the Pacific Ocean. The mishap occurred as the parachutes meant for landing failed to deploy, causing the capsule to plunge into the ocean. The next capsule had been tasked with transporting the remains of individuals sent through Celestis Memorial space flights. Geez, cremated remains now at the bottom of the Pacific. Talk about burned again. And boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. This Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
Deputies from the Indian River County, Florida Sheriff's Office responded to a distress call from a boater on Blue Cypress Lake. The boater reported that he had flipped his airboat over and was injured, and that a passenger was missing. The sheriff initiated a large rescue effort, calling in deputies, fire rescue, the sheriff's marine unit, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and a U.S. Coast Guard Black Hawk helicopter, only to arrive and find no accident at all. Instead, a department spokescop said, "The investigation revealed that the boater, identified as Derek Howard of Vero Beach, had simply run out of gas and concocted the story to expedite assistance." Howard was charged with misusing 911 and filing a false report to law enforcement. Now, why? Oh, why would you concoct a story that would literally bring out the cavalry and assume that upon discovery that you were just out of gas, you could simply say, "My bad," and not be charged with a crime? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0830. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestufffile.com, and once again, Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0830. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including KDXRadio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WNRHLP-FM in Newport Richey, Florida, KZZHLP-FM in Eureka, California, CKUW-FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've experienced another edition of the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. Now, doesn't that make you feel all warm and fuzzy? Like watching puppies and kittens frolicking in a field of daisies. Like the smells coming from Grandma's kitchen. Like the hallucinogenics you took in the 60s. I'm taking right now. Hello, cartoon birdies. Perhaps I said too much. Anyway, you know what I mean. Let the glow wash over you and enjoy. Peace out.